Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. We're going to be taking another look today at an album we've already touched on a little bit, one that's been making some serious waves and sparking a ton of conversation, and that's Milquetoast and Dark Matters from Franklin County Coding Company.
Yeah, these guys, we've talked about them before, right? They don't shy away from the hard stuff. They really dig into the issues.
No, they do not. In this album, I gotta say, it's quite a journey. It's got this blend of like ancient mythology and this really stark picture of what small town America is dealing with today. And they tie it all together with this critique of where country music is at right now.
Right, right.
We're unfortunately the band couldn't make it into the studio with us for this deep dive, but they were gracious enough to answer some of our questions via email and some really, really thoughtful responses.
Yeah, they did not hold back.
So we're going to be hearing a lot from them directly today in their own words, and I think it's going to paint a pretty vivid picture of well, frankly, of a country and an industry that they see as facing some pretty serious struggles.
Absolutely. And our goal today is to really try to unpack what Franklin County Coding Company is trying to say with this new album.
Yeah, like what's the core message here, and why does it seem to be hitting home for so many people?
Yeah, and I think a good place to start would be with that title, Milquetoast and Dark Matters. It's such a powerful image. You know, you've got this kind of bland, almost harmless thing, milk toast, but then you put it next to dark matters, and suddenly there's this weight, this sense of something much bigger and potentially very unsettling. So we asked them about that contrast, what they were going for with that title.
They wrote back, and I'm just going to read this directly here. Milk toast is that bland, soft thing, comfort food, sure, but also a jab at weakness, spinelessness. Dark matters pulls from physics 95% of the universe we can't see, but know it's there, shaping everything. Together, it's America. The surface is this milquetoast facade, country music's nostalgia, fake smiles online, fake costumes, institutions pretending to care, but underneath, there's corruption, drugs, a culture replaced and gutted. You don't notice the weight until it's crushing you.
Wow. I mean, it's powerful stuff. They really capture this sense of disconnect, this like gap between how things appear and what's actually going on underneath.
It's like they're saying, don't be fooled by the surface.
Exactly. And that idea of the dark matter, these unseen forces shaping our lives, it really makes you think about all the stuff that's going on that we maybe don't even realize is influencing us.
Right, right. And speaking of things that make you think, let's talk about the band's name for a second. Franklin County Coding Company. It's not exactly your typical catchy band name, is it?
No, it's not. You'd expect to see that on a tech startup or something.
Definitely not your typical country band.
Yeah.
So we asked about that too, where did that name come from?
Yeah. What's the story there?
And they said, it's a bitter laugh.
Yeah.
10 years back, as factories and mines hit their late January, their dying gasp, some elite types pushed coding classes on lifelong blue-collar workers. Guys who ran steel presses or worked long walls were told to just pivot to tech overnight. Even if they could, H-1B workers would replace them anyway. It was a sham lip service so the system could say, we tried, while towns died. The name's a middle finger to that abandonment.
Late January. That's such a powerful image right there.
Oh, yeah.
The dead of winter, everything's cold and dark. And, it really underscores that feeling of hopelessness they're talking about.
This idea that these towns, these communities were just left to die. And then there was this almost insulting attempt to oh, well, just go learn to code.
Yeah, like it's that simple.
Like it's that easy to just switch careers and entire ways of life overnight.
Right. Right. And it speaks to this bigger issue they've touched on before, which is this idea that there's this system and it's almost designed to keep certain people down. So we wanted to push them a little bit on that. And we asked, are you saying this isn't just neglect? It's intentional.
And their answer was 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not here pretending our music fixes it. What we do know is working class folks used to have a voice. Country music was it raw, real, theirs. Now it's either trust fund kids playing dress up or sanctimonious types who hate them, moralizing about getting with the times or mocking them outright. The real voices, silenced or sold back as a cheap knockoff. That's what Milquetoast kicks off with country music losing its soul.
That's a pretty harsh assessment of the state of country music.
It is. They're not pulling any punches.
They use this phrase cargo cult when talking about 90s country, which I found really interesting. Can you talk about that a little bit more, like what they said about that?
So here's what they wrote about that. These young artists think snap shirts, 44 beats, and steel guitar can summon back that era's prosperity. But that world's gone. Government and corporations sold it off, then handed out painkillers when people noticed. We love 90s country, Alan Jackson, George Strait, but mimicking it without facing what gutted those towns is hollow. It's cosplay, not reckoning.
They're saying it's more than just the music, right? It's about the whole context, the social and economic realities that made that music what it was.
Exactly. You can't just copy the sound and pretend you understand the substance.
Right. And it's not just the newer artists they have an issue with. It's also the established, the Gen X country stars, the ones who built their careers on those same themes.
Yeah, they had some pretty pointed observations about that. Here's what they said. The ones who built careers on small-town grit. They're regressives now. Smug urbanites, sneering at their old fans. Take Garth Brooks. At one of last year's concerts, the crowd didn't even know his songs. No one was singing along. Silence. It was clear they weren't there for music. They were there for his politics, cheering his betrayal of the people who made him. BLM, Ukraine, whatever, coup du jour. Then there's Dolly Parton, 80s icon, says a few Review-approved lines, and boom. Hipster bumper stickers, Walmart merch, God bless Dolly Parton on IPA bar windows. She's a neoliberal mascot now, safe for people who never step in a honky-tonk. The old fans get nostalgia. The new ones get a sanitized queen. Either way, it's not about the music. It's about who controls the culture.
So, for those who might not be super familiar with the term neoliberal, it generally refers to this set of economic and political ideas that emphasize free markets, less government regulation, things like that. So it sounds like they're saying Dolly Parton has become more of a symbol for those mainstream, maybe more corporate values, rather than the voice of the working class that she used to represent.
Right. And it gets back to this idea of control. Who gets to shape the narrative, who profits from it. They tied this directly back to the album, saying, it's the thread from milquetoast to sour grapes of wrath. The industry doesn't just abandon working class pain. It packages it, sells it back as an aesthetic. Rich kids and execs turn struggle into a prop, and the betrayal's complete when the old guard joins in.
It's like they're saying the industry is not just ignoring the pain, it's exploiting it.
And profiting from it.
Right. Now let's talk about the symbol that pops up throughout the album, the bronze rat statue. They connect it to Hindu mythology, specifically Ganesha's rat. Ganesha, for folks who might not know, is a major deity in Hinduism, often associated with wisdom and overcoming obstacles. And his mount is this rat, which can symbolize greed, chaos, all those desires that need to be controlled by wisdom. So we asked them about that symbolism.
And they told us, Ganesh is the god of wisdom, riding a rat, greed, chaos, destruction. Wisdom's supposed to steer it, but without that control, the rat runs wild. That's America. We used to ride ambition, and in their ignorance, the boomers rode neoliberal capitalism, even immigration, for the greater good. Now, greed's unchecked, corruption's loose, and no one's steering. In liquor license, a guy watches his town drown in third world corruption. By the time he sees the rat, it's too late. The joke is that the only hope is karma, which delivers variable results. We don't necessarily buy into that system, so in this album there's a twist and an adaptation.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? This idea that our ambition, which maybe used to be a good thing, has now become this unchecked force of greed and destruction, and nobody's at the wheel.
Yeah, like we're just along for the ride as this rat tears everything apart.
Exactly. And you mentioned that the rat shows up in several songs, most notably in the Bronze Rat and Liquor License. So we were curious about that, like why the rat keeps coming back and what its role is in the overall story of the album.
And they explained. The rat sticks around until the end with the promise of a resolution, but in a non-linear sense, hence the inversion. That is to say, Liquor License is actually a prequel. The rat is the protector of the store, but it witnesses so much corruption it activates as a cleansing mechanism. Kind of like temple table flipping in the Bible, referring to the event in the New Testament where Jesus confronts those profaning the temple in Jerusalem. When a god sees the perversion of the very ones he comes to protect, a cleansing has to take place. Some of the lyrics in The Bronze Rat hint at the rat first driving out the old owners of the store. The new man moves in, and he helps cleanse the town of the old owners and everyone who is reincarnated as a rat. Then he sets his sights on cleansing his own town, if you get what I mean. That's the joke, if you can hear it.
Okay, so the rat's not just a symbol of the problem, the corruption, but it could also be this force for change, this reckoning. It's interesting that Liquor License is actually a prequel. It adds this whole other layer to the story.
Definitely. They're playing with the timeline, making you think about how these events might be connected in ways you don't expect.
Absolutely. Now, they also talk a lot about this decline, not just of industry, but also of community. So we asked them, like, what's filling that void, When the jobs go and the churches empty out, what takes their place?
They said, drugs and bureaucracy. Jobs go, church is empty, and opioids keep people numb. The state swoops in, not to rebuild, but to churn folks into welfare. The only thing working in this town is that drugs and government aid is the last industries. Then government bill, a guy retires fat on 3 pensions for make-work jobs while the town crumbles. It's parasitism, not progress.
It's this bleak picture they're painting. You know, these communities lose their economic foundation, their sense of purpose, and what's left? Drugs and dependence on the government.
And a system that benefits from that dependence. It's not about helping people get back on their feet. It's about keeping them reliant.
Right. And then they have this song, Bone to Pick, which focuses on this specific type of local figure, these small town elites. How do they describe them?
They call them the local good old boys, gatekeepers, rigging contracts, hoarding power, pretending to be community pillars. In Bone to Pick, they're in a hospital, milking an old man's estate while he's barely alive. It's what they do to the town. Keep it on life support, drain it dry. Same greed, smaller scale.
So it's like a mini version of what they're talking about on the larger scale, right? This exploitation of the system for personal gain while the community suffers.
Exactly. It's happening at all levels.
And then we come to the final track, Sour Grapes of Wrath, which really seems to bring everything together. They're explicitly calling out the music industry in this one. So we asked them, what's the message behind this song? Why end the album on this note?
And they said, it's the final insult. Working class pain isn't just ignored, it's commodified. Trust fund kids sing about trailer parks they've never seen. Execs churn out nostalgia for a life they didn't live. It's hollow, numbing. Milquetoast calls out the soul's loss, and essentially how poor people lost their voice and are hopeless to regain it because of their engineered passivity and inability to diagnose the problem. Sour Grapes of Wrath shows how it was stolen and hints at who stole it. Because there's profit in keeping people disconnected from their own story and making money from it as you dance on their graves.
That's a really disturbing thought, that these real struggles are being turned into a commodity, stripped of their meaning, and sold back to people as some kind of like empty entertainment.
And they're making money off it.
Right. So we asked, is this critique just about country music, or is it about the music industry as a whole?
And they responded, yeah. From the cargo cult kids to the old guard flipping off their fans to Dolly being repackaged, it's all the same game. The industry doesn't want real voices. It wants control. It wants to neuter them and sell them back their nets with compounding interest.
So they see it as this pervasive problem. The industry doesn't want authenticity. It wants control. It wants to package and sell whatever it can, regardless of the real cost.
Right. It's a pretty bleak outlook, but they're definitely making people think about these issues.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And it all ties back to that album title, Milquetoast and Dark Matters. This contrast between this surface level of comfort and the much darker realities underneath.
Yeah. After you hear their explanations, it really hits you in a different way.
Huge thanks to Franklin County Coding Company for taking the time to talk with us. Even if it was just through email, it really helps to understand where they're coming from with this album.
Absolutely. And Milquetoast and Dark Matters drops next week. You can find it on Amazon, Spotify, all the usual places. I highly recommend giving it a listen. And like they said, really try to feel the weight of what they're saying.
Yeah, it's definitely an album that will stay with you. And that's it for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
See you then.